It's amazing how much the Lord desires to pour out the fullness of His life into the lives of His people. It's even more amazing how often His people reject it by looking for life in places and in ways where they're never going to find it. It's what Isaiah calls spending money on the bread that does not satisfy. In last week's reading from Psalm 78 to 80, we saw Israel's long history of disobedience and faithlessness, how the Lord gave them everything they could have ever needed or wanted, but how they continually turned against Him, how they continually complained against Him, how they even went and worshiped other gods. But the Lord wouldn't give up on them. He kept pursuing them patiently and faithfully because He loved them. And because He wanted to be their God, He wanted to live among them, and He wanted to fill their lives with His life. And in today's reading from Psalm 81 to 83, we see the Lord pouring out His heart again for His people, sharing His continual desire to give them fullness of life. And we continue to see their refusal to actually trust Him and just receive it. Listen to what He says in Psalm 81, beginning in verse 6. He says, "I set you free from slavery. I called you, I rescued you. When you doubted me in the wilderness, I proved myself to you." If only you would listen to me. He said, if only you would put away your false gods and recognize that I am the Lord your God who saves you. And then He invited them to trust Him. He said, open your mouth wide and I will fill it. But He says, my people didn't listen to my voice. And so I gave them what they wanted. I let them experience the pain of following after their own desires. But that wasn't His desire. He cried out again in verse 13, "Oh, that my people would listen to me, that they would walk in all of my ways. Instead of handing them over to their enemies, I would quickly subdue their enemies. I would feed them with the finest of wheat. And I wouldn't bring water from the rock this time. I would feed them with honey from the rock. I would satisfy you completely." What a simple and incredible offer. He's just saying, trust me to be your God. Obey my word. Walk with me. Walk in my ways, and I will fill your life with everything that you could ever need to flourish and to really live. You read that and it just makes you say, how could they be so foolish? They're like what Jeremiah talked about in Jeremiah 2 when he says that they have forsaken the fountains of living water so that they could go try and dig their own cisterns that He said can't hold any water at all. How could they be so stupid? Maybe we should ask that question of ourselves. We have a God who loves us with an everlasting love. He saved us not from slavery to Egypt, but from our slavery to sin. We're forgiven forever. Our sins are cast away as far as the east is from the west. We have His Word. We have His Spirit living within us. We have the living hope of eternity with Him, and yet we are still so easily deceived to go out and look for life in things that will never bring life. In Psalm 82, Asaph pleads with the Lord to rise up and to judge the ungodly nations who are coming and oppressing His people. In Psalm 83, he appeals to the Lord to defeat Israel's enemies for the sake of His name among the nations. And He will do that. He will one day bring judgment on everything that is proud and wicked and arrogant. He will one day make Himself fully known to the world as the Most High God when every knee bows and every tongue confesses that Jesus Christ is the Lord. But what He wants to do is so much more than just judging the wicked and showing Himself to be God. And what He wanted for His people in the past, He still wants for His people today. He wants us to love Him. He wants us to follow Him wholeheartedly. He wants us to know that everything that is good, everything that we call life, comes only from Him. In the same way that He looked out over His people Israel in the past, He so often looks at us today when we get led astray as to where life is found. And He says, oh, that my people would listen to me, that they would walk in all of my ways. I would give them fullness of life, the fullness of life that I created them to experience, if they would just simply trust me to be God.